This is AndyTube. In this video, I'm going to show you how I check and or set the timing on a Singer Model 503A. And when people say set the timing, they mean the timing between the needle point and the point on the hook. In this case, we have a rotary hook. Now, before you can check the timing, you need to check that the needle bar is installed and still at the same height. So you want your machine, the needle position, to be into center. So if it's left or right, move it into center. And you want it in the zero or straight stitch position. So that way your needle bar is going up and down, not zigzagging. Okay? And then we're going to come around here, and I've removed the slide plate and the needle plate and the bobbin and bobbin holder here. And I've removed the feed dogs, but that's just to give you a better view. If you don't want to remove the feed dogs, you don't necessarily have to do that. Now, to check that the needle bar is installed at the right height, let's see if I can get it set up here and get a good picture for you. On the needle bar, there are two timing marks, and these are just like two circles around the needle bar etched into the bar. So they usually look dark because they've got oil or debris in them. But the way the needle bar height and the timing mark works is that you will you turn the hand wheel towards you and you lower the needle bar to its lowest position. Okay? And then you have to get way under here and look to see the top timing mark should be just about to disappear into the bushing of the needle bar. So you should still be able to see the top timing mark, but just barely. It should be, you know, like parallel to that top, parallel with the bottom of the needle bar bushing up under here. And if it is not, you need to loosen the screw here that holds the needle bar in the clamp and raise or lower the needle bar so that the top timing mark, which is the needle timing, the needle height, is just about disappearing into that bushing. Now, once that you've got your needle height verified or set, if you have to, then the next thing to do is to continue turning the hand wheel towards you just a little bit and get the bottom timing mark, which is the needle to hook timing mark, has to be disappearing into that bottom of the bushing now. So you should still be able to see it, but just barely. Whew. Okay, so now I have my needle bar height set to check if the needle to hook timing is set. Let me get this tilted a little for you. get some little better, I don't know about better light here. See if I can. Okay, so here's the needle. That's a little better. How's that? Here's the needle, and my needle bar on the upward stroke, the bottom timing mark is parallel with the very bottom of the bushing, needle bar bushing, where the needle bar goes through. The bottom timing mark's parallel though. And then when I stand in front of the machine and look behind the needle here, I should see the point of the hook, of this rotary hook. And the point in this instance is not there. The point is kind of over here. So if I tried to sew with this, I would at the very least be skipping stitches, because my needle would be coming up and the hook would miss the thread. So I'd be a little bit off. Now it's not much off. You can see, let me check this again on the upwards stroke. My lower timing mark's disappearing. Right? Am I looking? Go back up here. My lower timing mark is just about to disappear on the upward stroke, not the downward stroke. On the upward, as the needle bar is lifting up. Okay, I verified there, and I verified that my needle bar is installed properly. And here is my needle, but the hook is over here about a ½ inch away. So I've checked the needle to hook timing, and it's off a little bit. So how am I going to correct that? Is back this out. I have to do it from the bottom of the machine. So let me put down a softer cloth here in the back. I've got to lay the machine down on its back. And I don't want to touch the hand wheel. I don't want to move this height of my needle bar, because I've kind of like triple checked it, and I know it's correctly on the up stroke. The lower timing mark is disappearing into the bushing, so I've got to leave that all alone, and I've got to come down here on the bottom of the machine, get some, and do the work down here. Now the mistake that a lot of people make is they go over here to this gear on the bottom of the hook, because we have to move the hook point now to line it up with the needle. So they come over here in this area and start loosening things and taking the gear off, turning the hook, whatever. But while the machine is all connected, everything is tight, if you turn any of these gears, you're going to be moving the needle bar up and down. So don't do anything on this machine as far as loosening screws over here. Okay, let's go to the other side, and I'll show you where you have to loosen screws. Okay, I think this will give you a pretty good shot of it here. So this is what I'll call the right end of the horizontal hook shaft. This takes the power from up above through this 90-degree gear system, takes it over to this side, and through this 90-degree gear system, transfers it to the actual shaft of the hook and up to the hook to make it spin. So we're going to come over on that right end here, and we're going to loosen the set screws that hold this gear onto the horizontal hook shaft. So then we can rotate the gears on the end of the hook, and the shaft will rotate, but this gear won't rotate because we'll have it loose. And then that means this won't rotate and it won't go up and move the needle bar. So we can leave our needle bar set, and we can move the hook to get the proper timing. So there's two set screws here, and these should be tight, and they may have never been loosened since the factory put them in. So what I usually do is put some kind of penetrating oil on them, let them sit on there for a few minutes. I happen to use WD-40 or 3-in-1 penetrating oil. I know there's many others. That's just what I have. So just any penetrating oil, and put it up here on the screws for the gear here. The other thing that you can do, and some of the guys and gals I talk to that work on these machines, is they use tapping to, let me get my screwdriver out here, and you want a very good fitting bit on the screw. Now I actually have a screw. Sometimes there's Allen wrench type hex screws. Let's see if this one's a little bit better fit. So just get a very good fitting screwdriver or hex wrench, as the case may be. I think that's a little, I'm going to try that one. It might be a little too big, because you don't want to strip these screws. Boy, then you really have a big problem. So where I like to use penetrating, sometimes people put a screwdriver in there and tap on it with I have a little 2-ounce brass jeweler's handle, but you can use a rubber mallet or wood or whatever, and they'll give it a couple of good taps like that. So that can kind of break the screw free, especially if it's rusty. But like I said, I usually just use penetrating oil to loosen it up. And you're going to back these screws out. I never take them all the way out because they're too fiddly for me. But you've got to secure everything here, so you can put some pressure on it. Not going to show up at all on my, and break that screw. Break that screw free. Give it a couple turns to back it away from the shaft. Now the weird thing is now is I can't see both screws, so I've got to turn this, which is going to mess up my needle position, right? But what choice do I have? I can't get to the other screw, so I'll have to mess up my needle position by finding that other screw, and then go back and reset the needle position. Okay, there's my other screw. So I'm gonna go in here and loosen it. Okay. Now to see if the gear is loose on the shaft, and it still rotates with the shaft, so I'm going to loosen them a little bit more. If they happen to fall out, then I guess they do. I'm going to have to turn this again, get to the other screw. Alright, now let's see, is that okay? The way I can test this now is I can go over to this gear on the bottom of the actual hook shaft, and I can turn it, and it's rotating everything right up to here, but since the screws are loose, it's not turning this gear, and that's what you want. So if you get the screws backed out and this still turns with the hook gear, that means the shaft inside is sticky and varnished to the gear, so you're going to have to put some more penetrating oil or something to break it free. But once you can turn the hook gear independent of this gear, whoop. Sorry about that. Once you can turn the hook gear over there, oh, it's a little bit tight still. You have to loosen it up a little bit more, I think. Okay. Let's see now. Okay. So I can turn this gear now independent of this gear. So, unfortunately, because I had to spin this to get to the screws, I've got to go up and check my needle position now. And I can do it with the machine laying on its back like this. So I'm just going to go around to this side of my workbench and bend way over and look at that needle, and then I'm going to go to this side of the sewing machine and turn the hand wheel, and I'll be turning the upper. Why is that still turning? Man, I think my shaft in there is sticky. These screws are just about to fall out. There we go. Let's see, can I turn? Yeah, now I can turn the hand wheel without turning this shaft. So that's what I've got to do. I've got to go over, bend over, look at my needle, turn the hand wheel towards the front, or towards you when you face the machine, and get that needle on the upstroke, lower timing mark, even with the bushing, to reset the needle that we did before. When I do that, I'll come back and show you how we're going to get the hook then behind that needle. Okay. I just turned on my cell phone to use the timer. That's all the messages, sorry. Okay, so my needle bar is at the right height, and I've got this loose so that I can rotate this gear, which will move my hook point behind my needle, without moving this gear, which will raise or lower the needle. Right? Okay. So if you see here, I can turn this, which is turning the hook up above, and it's not going to change this gear. Okay. So now I've got to go back to the front where I can see the hook point, and I'm going to turn this clock. Whoops, can you still see it? I'm going to turn this gear clockwise until the point of the hook gets right behind that needle. And I mean right behind it. So I'm looking from the top down at the hook and needle, and I'm almost there. Almost there. Yeah, I think I'm there. Ta-da! Okay, so now my hook, point, and needle are matching, timed together on the upstroke of that needle. So what I have to do now is come over here and tighten this gear back down to keep the timing there. And fortunately for me, one of the screws is in a very easy position for my screwdriver. The other one is kind of down here. So what I'm going to do without changing anything is tighten one firmly enough that I can turn it and then tighten the other. Now when you tighten this, you have to have clearance. So it has to be this way against the matching gear over here, so that the teeth mesh nicely without being so jammed together that it binds. And you cannot let the base of this gear rub against the bushing over here, because that will bind. So no matter how you mesh the gear, you're going to have to leave a little bit of space between the base of this gear and the bushing. Okay, so I'm looking at my gear mesh, just kind of pushing it over with my finger like that. I raise this up, would that give a better view? So I'm just going to kind of nudge that gear up against the other gear and then wiggle it a little to make sure that, you know, I'm firmly against it, but I'm not jammed against it. And I don't have a big gap which will strip the gear or skip a tooth here and there. But when you do this, you don't want to change how it meshes, because they're factory ground together. So if you pull it off or pull it away and spin it around without turning this one, oops, you're gonna lose that nice smooth factory meshing. So I feel pretty good that I'm meshed nice and not too tight, and I have my gap here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to snug up that first set screw against the shaft. There's no flat spot on the shaft. That's why you have two set screws. So I didn't really bear down, but you know, enough. So now I can turn that hand wheel towards me and rotate to the other gear here, and I can check my meshing as I turn, and does it look even. Sometimes if you tighten one set screw and not the other, it gets a little bit of a lean on the gear. So I think I'm okay. I'm going to snug this up. I see little bubbles from my penetrating oil in there. I'm going to snug that up. Whoop, pretty snug. Okay. And I backed out pretty good here, yeah. So I don't feel like my base of the gear is rubbing on the bushing. I can see a little space in there. Now I'm going to just turn the hand wheel, and everything is turning. Everything is looking good. And I'm just going to watch how those gears mesh. Do they mesh good and evenly? You know, if this is on crooked, as it's lopsided going around, it might mesh too close in one spot and loose in the next halfway around. So you just want to kind of make sure you got an even mesh. And once it's timed, you can come back and easily do this meshing procedure again just by loosening the 2 screws. And if you feel you got it a little tight, you know, back it off. Just keep your space over here. If you feel it's a little bit loose, then loosen the screws and move it against the gear a little more firm and tighten it up. But before you really tighten those, you want to look at your timing to be sure that you fix the problem, right? So for that, I'm going to turn the machine back up here and try and position it so that I can give you a close-up look down here at the needle. Okay, get some good light there. Now I'm going to go down and I'm going to turn my hand wheel so that that timing mark is the lower timing mark is disappearing into the bushing here on the upward stroke. Okay, and then I want to verify, and there it is. I want to verify that the very point of that hook is directly behind the needle. I don't want to see the point before the needle or sticking past the needle. Get it as close to directly behind that needle as you can. Okay, so I think I did a good job. I think with my needle bar on the upward stroke, lower timing mark disappearing into the bushing, I now have the point of that hook right there behind the needle. See, let me turn it a little past. You see the point going past and coming around here? Okay, turn it back. Now the point is over on this side, but with the timing mark set, I want that point. So let me just look at the point here. Let me get the point right behind the needle. Looks good. And then I'm going to get down here and look at my needle bar and the timing mark. Am I on the upward stroke? Yep. My timing mark is just barely visible under here before it disappears up into that steel bushing, the silver steel bushing. So, whoops, sorry. I think I did a good job there. If it was off, I would have to go back to the bottom here, and I'd have to loosen my screws on the don't slip on me. I'd have to loosen my screws over here on this gear and come back and turn this clockwise until I had it correct, and then hold it there and tighten the screws here. But you can't forget about your meshing, and you can't forget about a space over here. And when you feel that you have it right, like I feel, I'm going to turn it, do a 360 degrees all the way around that gear, and watch the mesh. Watch how these gears mesh right here. I want to see if they do it evenly and freely. Because if this is on lopsided, you'll get a point when you're turning that, oh wow, the gears are kind of tight. And then on the opposite side of that lopside, you'll get the gears are a bigger gap here. So you don't want any binding, but you don't want it loose. And I got my gap. Yay! Okay, so then I would come over here and finish tightening this, and back out a little bit. Finish tightening that, both of these set screws, because I don't want to lose that timing, right? I don't want anything loose down here. So get in here and tighten my other set screw. Sorry, I'm behind the camera here, so, and I'm just a fumble finger anyway. There we go. Oop. Turn that back. So even though I kind of know what I'm doing, you see what happens when you work on these. So when that happens to you, don't think you're clumsy or anything, just remember me. Okay, now since I'm such a OCD about these gear mesh, I'm going to look in there one more time while I rotate the hand wheel, and put it back a little bit so I can get a little more light on it. There we go. While I, right in that mesh, to make sure they really look smooth and even. One gear's not higher than the other, you know, right on the tips. That there's, you know, if I look at it and I say, oh, there's a little tiny space between the gears when they go, good, just enough room for grease, right? But as I turn that 360, do I have the same gap between the gears? And if it's off, you're going to have to loosen the screws and tighten them up more even. That's why you don't want to tighten one super hard before you tighten the other side, because you can get it kind of not even, right? I got my nice gap here all the way around. When I turn the gear, I watch that gap and it's like, yeah, it looks good. Okay, I'm pretty good. But if I ever feel it's not a good mesh, I can come back, right? Okay, so that's how I do it. So let's just do a little recap. For your timing check to be accurate, you have to be sure the needle bar is installed at the right height. And maybe I can put a link about that. But basically, the needle bar has to be in its lowest position, and the top timing mark disappearing almost or parallel with the very bottom of the bushing up under here. Okay, if it's not, you loosen the clamping screw and move the needle bar up and down until that's set. So now you know your needle bar height. Because if that's off and you change the timing and then later correct the needle bar height because you're skipping stitches, then the timing will be off again. Okay, so you do that first. You have your machine, the needle bar center, not right or left, but you have the position centered, and you have it in straight stitch, not any zigzag width. Okay, and then on the upward stroke of the needle bar, the bottom timing mark has to be just disappearing into that bushing, and then you come and look and make sure that the very point of the hook is behind that needle. That's where it's got to be, right there, to snatch that little loop of thread. If it's not, if it's off, you're going to turn the machine over and you're going to loosen the 2 set screws on this gear, and make sure that if the shaft rotates, this gear doesn't. And then you're going to go over, let me back up, and then you're going to go over and turn this clockwise until the point does get behind the needle. I don't remember why you got to turn it clockwise. I just remember they said always turn it clockwise, even if you got to go like all 350 degrees or something. Always turn it clockwise, don't turn it counter. But once you get the hook behind the needle, then you come back over here and you tighten this gear, the screws on this gear back up, watching the mesh, even mesh, not too close so it binds, and a little space between the bushing and the bottom of the gear. Whew. So I don't know. I had a lady tell me last month that what's considered the most reputable sewing repair store in the Phoenix metro area, and authorized Singer, that the time a vintage machine like this, they want $150. $150? Wow. I mean, hey, when this is done, I'll sell you the whole machine for $250. So anyway, you can see you can do this yourself. You know, you can do this yourself, and that's how I do it. You may find a smoother way or a little bit better way, and if you do, I hope you tell us. I hope you share with us, post a video and give us a link, you know. But that should give you a very good idea on this machine. And these instructions are good for the Singer 500A, and I would say that they'll work for the 401A, the 403, 404 also, because they have the same kind of gearing system and hook system and needle bar system. Phew, okay, I'm beat. That's what I can tell you about that timing. Thanks so much for watching the video, and I welcome comments, suggestions, complaints. Well, I don't know, complaints. I don't know if that's the right word, but if you want to subscribe, please do. You're very welcome. On my About page of my channel is the email address for the channel, and you can email me there with a direct question about your machine, or if there's some way I can help you, I will. And I get requests, you know, every week. Somebody, hey, I'm having this, or what can you tell me about that, or where could I find this part, or whatever. If I can help, I will. If I can't, I'll tell you. So thanks again. Come back and see me. Take care.